An inspiring life story is the account of a moment when an extraordinary person reveals the key that unlocked the door to their success. Among the many themes explored in these narratives are triumphs over adversity and the shattering of previously established boundaries. Not only can you as an individual motivate others to chase their dreams, but you can also provide them with the means they need to keep going strong once they reach their goals. Change is coming, even if it's not greeted. If you're not prepared, consider yourself cheated. We try to prevent change by avoiding and denying. Know that even if you ask nothing, change is still replying. Don't short yourself this moment. It chose you for a reason. Whether it's cold, hot, or wet, you better prepare for the season. Change is necessary. Change is growth. Change is on its way. I just thought I'd let you know. Welcome, everyone, to the Live and Learn podcast, the show where we dive into life-changing stories, empowering and impactful messages, and stories, again, that will change your life. I'm your host, Walter Williams, and I'm excited to dive into this impactful and deep conversation with you. And hopefully you walk away inspired, enlightened, motivated, and ready to take on your next journey. On this podcast and with deep discussion in general, our mission is to encourage people to always remember that adversity is an opportunity, not an obstacle, and that living and learning are constant companions, and that we should always be a student of life by learning from every experience. Today, we're going to talk about the subject of change. And that's what the title is called. We're all subject to change. Change is something that we all, at some point or another, have struggled with, and in some cases, been reluctant to embrace when it's come our way. My original plan was to have a conversation with the CEO and president of Associated Black Charities, Chrissy Thornton, someone who I know is a strong advocate and pioneer of change, as her organization, their mission and purpose is to not only change the way people view the Black community, but break the barriers that have been that have come as a result of structural racism, and also to create opportunities for Black people to thrive. Unfortunately, I was unable to get her to appear on the show, but I do want her to know that her efforts, her work is celebrated by me constantly and regularly. So you are someone that I look up to and admire in this fight and in this constant, this constant push that you're in. And I'm always going to be an advocate. So know that you have a seat waiting for you on this show when you want to be a guest, and we can dive deeper into today's subject, which was inspired by something that she shared last week, if not the week before. But before we dive into the story that she shared, it's funny how I'm a numbers person. So when I see numbers, sometimes they trigger something for me, whether it's an experience I had that number is connected with, or it just means like something is quote unquote adding up or not adding up. And I was driving behind a DHL truck one day, and it said that the company had been established in 1969. And two things went through my mind. One, that's not that long ago. I thought DHL was around longer than that. But the other thing was, I had just saw this number somewhere. It looks familiar. But the number that I had seen was 1959, which brings me back to Chrissy. She had shared a story about how in 1959, a gentleman by the name of Marion Hood had applied to attend college at, I think it was Emory College, if I'm not mistaken. But he had applied to attend Emory College and was rejected because of his race. And Chrissy had mentioned to think that she was only one generation removed from that, and her mother was a part of, I think, was a part of that generation. So to think that Chrissy was one generation removed from that, Imagine if she wasn't afforded the opportunities that she had the benefit of experiencing. We would not be beneficiaries of the change that she's out here making, and we would not be able to. And many others would not be able to, to see, experience, and take hold of the amazing work that she continues to do. So again, Chrissy, we celebrate you. We thank you for your constant hard work out here for the Black community and for those who are underprivileged. And we continue to applaud you and want you to continue to keep up the great work. And also find your way to being a guest on this podcast someday soon, please. So with all of that being said, we're going to now segue over to change. Again, change is something that we struggle with, in many ways. That topic of, our environment, struggling to adjust to change when it comes to what I was just talking about the Black community, is something I could probably go on for hours talking about. But I'd much rather have that conversation with Chrissy. So hopefully her and I can engage in that conversation one day, and maybe her, I, and other people. But today we're going to talk about change on an individual level, on a human, as a human element. And again, we live in a world where change is something that a lot of people are ignorant to. And I'm not going to sit up here and say that I'm innocent. Sometimes I resist the prospect of change too. We all do. It's human nature. But what happens is we resist change because change makes us feel uncomfortable. And what also happens is we view things differently when it comes to change. And we're going to get into that. View is a big word. So I want you to really hold on to that. Keep that in your pocket real quick, because you're going to pull it right back out in just a second. But what happens is when we hear change, we equate that with having to change who we are, become someone different to appease others or to appeal to some type of, concept or mission that we want to be a part of. We think that the idea that change is required means we have to be someone different. But that is not the case. Change is growing, change is adopting, and it's transforming your perspective to influence positive behavior. Now, go back to your pocket and pull out that word view, because the key concept or the key message that I want you to take away from today's conversation that we're about to dive into is how we view things tends to impact how we do things. It sounds like a basic concept, but I'm going to show you why it's not. When we view things a certain way, when our minds are made up that things are one specific way, we get so caught up in the idea of change being necessary, because we think that it means we have to either do one or two things, either change how we view things or go in a way that's different to how we view things. So change oftentimes is something that many are reluctant to do, because, how we view things is how we do things. And any kind of change or alteration of that in our makeup becomes something that we start to fight with, resist, and, honestly become sometimes, in some cases, violent with. And just know this: if we fail to change and graduate our views of things, then how we do things will remain the same. And when we do things the same, we don't innovate or elevate. How do you think, if you look at how our world was, say, 20 years ago compared to now, do you think things are different now than they were then? Of course. How are they different? Because people made changes. People saw that the world needed something different in a specific aspect of this world. They made the changes, and now, in some cases, more than not, I will say, we're in a better place now than we were back then. There's some things that still needs work, that we still need to work on, but that is why messages like this has to continue to be expressed and shared, that we have to change the way we view things, because it impacts how we do things, which changes for the betterment of our society. And know that if you're not changing, you're not growing. And if you're not growing, then you're dying. Just like a flower. And that quote, by the way, if you're not changing, then you're dying, was quoted by William S. Burroughs. I like to give people their flowers, no pun intended, when I hear good quotes that are meaningful to me. So if you don't know who William S. Burroughs is, Google him and look up the quote. If you're not growing, then you're dying. But if you're not growing, you're dying just like a flower. And change is the water that we place on those flowers so that it can experience growth. And we all need water, both figuratively and literally. If you're not drinking water, you're going to get dehydrated. And if you get dehydrated too long, you die. That's the same way we have to be about change. Subjecting yourself to change is the water that you need to continue to grow as a human being. How you view things, again, tends to impact and affect how you do things. And what happens is when we view things the way, say the prior generation did, we create chaos. We create animosity, and we have this tug and pull. And sometimes it's a little bit more pulling, where it's pulling us back instead of pushing us forward. So I'm gonna share a quick story with you. When I was this past Sunday, when I just got finished playing basketball with a few of my friends, I played with guys from different ages, from my age, in the mid to mid to high 30s to up to like maybe 60 some years old. I think it's even one up there that's like in his pushing 80. But me and a friend of mine who I graduated with, we're the same age. We're both 37, and we coincidentally were on our way to our cars with two older gentlemen now in their 60s. And me and my friend were talking about, I forgot what led to us talking about what we were talking about, but one thing led to another. And then next thing you know, we're talking about wives and how their wives, the older gentlemen, are, one that's always checking on and wondering where are they, why can't they do things with them, always trying to do things together, always trying to get them to stop and do things. So like almost to a sense where they say their wives almost act as if they need to be a part of every single thing that they're doing, or want to have some sort of, involvement in everything that they're doing. And they really just made it sound like their wives are nagging them or annoying them. And that conversation started because my friend, who's the same age as me, asked us all a question, because he was the one that's not married. So I'm married, and the two older gentlemen that's in their 60s are married. And I couldn't say anything in that conversation. And I'm glad I didn't, because I quickly told my friend, I texted him after the four of us left and went our separate ways. I quickly texted my friend and said to him, I don't know what they talking about. That's their generation. Because our generation built different. I don't have those problems with my wife, nor does any of the husbands that I know that are my age have that problem with their wives either. Most of the time, our wives want to do their own thing. There are times where I'm trying to get my wife to do stuff with me sometimes. And that's the thing. Like, if we still adopted that same mindset that past generation had, think of how much turmoil there would be in marriages. Because, we've heard for years now about the divorce rate, and I should have looked that rate up before I came on and did this episode, but I didn't want that to be the focal point of my conversation. The focal point is change. We have to change the way we talk about things, the way we view things, and the way we do things. Because had my friend, who was the same age as me, adopted that view that they had and took it into how he viewed things in his life, one or two things would have happened. Either he will have a hard time finding a wife, or he'll have a hard time keeping a wife. Because wives of this generation are different. They are not the same as those 60-year-old wives that they were alluding to or talking about when they were telling us about how their wives are doing things or don't do things for them. So that's the story I wanted to share. If he was to view things the same way that they view things, or he adopted their views into his life, he would have done things the same way, and he would have probably been saying the same things that they're saying. I'm singing a different tune. And the guys that I know who are married that are my age say the same thing as me. You know, their wives don't always want to be up under them. Their wives want to do their own thing sometimes too. My wife sometimes be saying, I want to go to the store by myself. I'm like, okay. My wife will say to me, yeah, me and my girls are hanging out, you know, such and such day. They just went to a concert together this past weekend. And I couldn't be more thrilled. Not because I'm glad that my wife is is, you know, giving me a quote unquote break, but I'm glad to see my wife is out having a good time and don't always need me to be a part of her situations for her to have a good time. We have great times together. I love spending time with my wife, and she loves spending time with me. But it doesn't have to be this thing where you always complaining about your wife wanting to do things with you, because we don't have that. We have conversations. So I ain't trying to make this be a whole, you know, husband and wife conversation. This is again about change. Change the way you view things so that you can adjust the way you do things. And again, when you keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, you know what they say, you're pretty much insane. And doing things over and over again is a result of you still viewing things the same. For me, that's how it's been with this platform for me sometimes. I keep wanting different results, but I'm not changing the way I do things. And sometimes change can be as simple as hearing the same thing you heard a week ago, and instead of only listening to them talk for 5 minutes, maybe now listen to them for 10 minutes. Maybe ask a question this time as opposed to just listening so that you can talk. Maybe, you know, ask them a question so that you can engage in conversation to give you an opportunity to say what it is you want to say. Because here's the tricky part about asking questions, something that I stress religiously on this platform, the importance of asking questions. Sometimes when we listen to speak, what we need to do is, because some people struggle with getting out of that habit or out of that mindset. But what you need to do too is sometimes ask a question that's a lead up to what you want to say. So if you and I are having a conversation and you're not feeling the things that I'm saying, instead of jumping right into what it is that you're thinking or what you're feeling because you disagree with me, how about asking me a question first, asking a leading question to what it is that you want to discuss. Ask me, what are your thoughts on, or, okay, you say this, but what if this happened? And then give me a chance to give you my thoughts. Because what happens is, if you're truly trying to understand what someone is saying and truly trying to get the, get the nature of what they're sharing, then you'll have a genuine conversation that can result in positive change. And that positive change does not always have to mean that you change the way you view things immediately or right away or completely. It could just mean a slight shift in, how you see things in a certain type of situation or a certain circumstance. So change the way you view things so that you can adjust the way you do things. I think before I transition over to my next segment of spiritual relief, one thing that I really want you to really think about in your personal, in your personal journey is something that you found yourself being in constant, chaos or contention with, that you feel is hampering your ability to elevate and grow in your life. Something that you feel as though you may be a little bit reluctant to. It could be something as simple as, needing a cup of coffee every single day, but hearing on the news that, drinking too much coffee can cause X, Y, Z. Some people will hear that and be like, I don't care. I need coffee. But think about that for a minute and just ask yourself, if you viewed it a little bit differently, not if you stop drinking coffee every day, but say if you decide, all right, I'm going to drink coffee every other day. Again, I don't want anybody to be coming at me thinking that I'm trying, because my wife loves coffee and drinks coffee every day. And because of her, oftentimes I'd probably drink it every day too. But I'm gonna be honest, I could go a day or two without drinking it. Because the only time I drink it usually is when she gets it. If my wife ain't getting coffee, I'm typically not getting coffee. So I'm not a deep coffee lover like a lot of people are. But if you decided to say, all right, I'm going to drink coffee every other day, or instead of drinking coffee every workday, I'm going to drink coffee 3 days a week. How do you think that view of things would change how you do things? Because what happens is what you're doing is drinking coffee 3 times a week, but you're doing it because maybe you heard something about what they said on the news, so that skewed your view or adjusted your view. But sometimes what happens is we hear things and we just kind of like just say, oh, whatever. Or on the other side, we hear things and completely change how we do things. What I'm saying is do research, educate yourself a little bit more. If you don't feel comfortable with that change, two schools of thought. Change is not supposed to be comfortable if it's supposed to make you better. It's like, when you hit the weight room or when you exercise and you feel sore, you feel tired because you're exercising. You feel the soreness and the fatigue from working to help you in the long run. Same thing with coffee, I guess. You hear them say what they say and then maybe do a little bit of research, say, okay, maybe if instead of getting 3 shots of espresso, maybe I should get 1 shot of espresso. How much of a difference does that make? Maybe instead of having, the strongest, whatever, I'm not a coffee enthusiast, so I don't know all of the details. But I will say there are things that I do in my personal life that I'm self-aware of and say, okay, I know that doing too much of this is probably a bit much. So I need to change the way I view things about this. If I view this as something that helps me, feel better, that helps, that I just really enjoy because it does something to me, what can I do to substitute that? What can I do to kind of like bring that down from doing it too much to doing it sometimes or not a lot, doing it occasionally, whatever the case may be. So that's just something I want you to think of. Challenge yourself in that regard. Now we're going to transition over to spiritual relief, which today comes from Philippians chapter 3, verses 17 through 21. And the message of the Lord says, dear brothers and sisters, pattern your lives after mine and learn from those who follow our example. For I have told you often before, I say it again with tears in my eyes, that there are many whose conduct shows they are really enemies of the cross of Christ. They are headed for destruction. Their God is their appetite. They brag about shameful things and they think only about this life here on earth. But we are citizens of heaven, where the Lord Jesus Christ lives, and we are eagerly waiting for him to return as our Savior. He will take our weak mortal bodies and change them into glorious bodies like his own, using the same power with which he will bring everything under his control. And here's what I wrote, or the message that I came to the conclusion of after reading this scripture. Those who resist change and refuse to view life through a new perspective stand as adversaries to the message of Christ. Their lack of understanding is rooted not in determination, but in stubbornness and a narrow mindset. They mistake rigidity for strength, forgetting that God designed us to be dynamic beings created to adapt, to learn, to grow, and to elevate. All of these are forms of change, though often labeled different. Yet when the word change is spoken, it stirs discomfort, even resistance. But remember this, Change is not just inevitable, it is essential. It is the very discipline that aligns us with God's will, breaking the chains of our stubbornness and misunderstanding. Embrace change, for it is the pathway to true growth and transformation. That's the message. That's all. That's all that needs to be shared from that. And that's, I couldn't have like stated that any better. So when I wrote it down and did some revision, I said I'm going to read it word for word because that's the crux of what that version, what those scriptures said to me. We have to be open to change. Change is not always a bad thing. Change does not mean be someone or something different. It means align yourself with what to God is trying to instill in you and trying to get you to be, so that you can be a wonderful, inspiring, and motivating human being in the kingdom of Christ. Now we're going to transition over to the last segment, and this is called In My Opinion. And for In My Opinion, these are the hardest things that I had to change or adjust to. Be sure to visit my social media page and share your thoughts on this when I share my quick message on my social media pages on Instagram, Facebook, X, I still call it Twitter, but also TikTok. So the three hardest things for me were living in a new county, becoming a parent, and my mindset when it comes to my career. So a quick explanation of all three. When I moved to a new county, I lived in Baltimore for my entire life. I've been, like I said earlier, I just turned 37 this year. I've lived in Harford County now for almost 4 years. So I've been in Baltimore for 33 years of my life. Coming here was a world of difference. I don't see as many people that look like me. The places that I'm used to going is not right up the street. There are locations like those places, but it's not the same as saying, oh, let me go meet up with a friend, 20 minutes down the road. Now I have to, also because I have a family, I have to make these plans well in advance because of the distance between me and the people that I, used to spend a lot of my time with. But my wife helped me adjust quickly to living in the new county. So thank God for her. And I love living here. So it was definitely a change. Becoming a parent just changes so much about who you are, your makeup, and what you do. Your priorities change, the way you see and view things change. You can't look at everything from an adult lens anymore. You have to look at things from the lens of a child. You have to say, how is my child feeling? Or why do they feel this way? And you have to be willing to, kind of like put yourself in their positions a little bit more so that you can be a little bit more empathetic, more sensitive, and more caring and understanding. And my mindset when it comes to my career, I've always been someone that was ambitious and always going after the next goal. Soon as I get into one role, I'm looking at the next one like, all right, I'm here. My next step is, but now with where I'm at now and with the way the job market is, it's forced me to slow down and to embrace the opportunities that exist in the role that I have now. Be willing to not just change your mindset, but to change the way you interact and the way you behave in that environment that you're in. And that's what I had to learn. Instead of always saying, all right, I'm here, it's time to get to the next level or work towards the next level, I had to really value the things that are being given to me in this space and see them as opportunities and not obstacles. And that's how I learned, that's how I framed that quote. Adversity is an opportunity, not an obstacle. So when I deal with things in my job now that may not seem ideal or, what I envision, I see them as opportunities to, strengthen my abilities, to lengthen my tool belt and prepare myself for that next role, whether that next role is tomorrow or whether that next role is in 5 years. Always look at it as an opportunity to get better and to move closer to where it is that you feel you should be, but more importantly, where God has you planned to be. As always, thank you again for your support, and I appreciate you tuning into the Live and Learn podcast. We hope that you take away from this all that there is to take away, and I hope you walk away from this knowing that how you view things impacts how you do things. Again, we hope that you come away with fresh insight, knowledge, and motivation to carry with you on your own path. And make sure you keep in mind and always remember that learning and living are constant companions throughout life. Be sure to subscribe for more interesting discussions and forward this episode to your family and friends if you thought this was a great episode. Also, try to be a guest if you have a message you'd like to share. You can follow us on deep discussion pages on all social media platforms, as I just stated, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also contact me via phone at 443-356-6096 or email me at deepdiscussion13@gmail.com. Be sure to visit my website to learn more about our mission. We sell books, we sell t-shirts, and we also conduct workshops. So if you're someone that is interested in partnering with Deep Discussion in any regards or receiving some of the inspiration that we have to share, contact me today. Visit my website, deepdiscussion.org, and let's get you connected, and let's celebrate your business platform or the message that you want to have. Until our paths cross again, may you continue to live, learn, and appreciate the adventure. Stay inquisitive and take care.